Hey y'all, how are you? This is Beth and welcome to the Curiosity Cafe. Now, we all want silver bullet fixes for higher ed, climate, and water, but real solutions are messier. So today on the cafe, I am joined by Professor Ehab Meselhe from Tulane's River Coastal Science and Engineering program. He is helping launch a new civil engineering program while rethinking what higher education should cost, how system designs meet water futures, and why curiosity may be the new curriculum. If you care about where learning, rivers, and resilience collide, this conversation is for you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever y'all are. It's morning here, hence the coffee cup. I'm Beth Salyers. I'm your host of the Curiosity Cafe, and I am delighted that my guest answered my email to do this and then set up a time so quickly. Ehab, you are one of the people that when I get to have a conversation with, you are inspiring, you're insightful, you are reflective, and you're one of those people who truly weaves, I think, together how you, what you do in this world with who you are. It's the what I get from you whenever I get to be in your presence and learn from you. So if you would, thank you so much for being here. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, first, thank you so much for this very kind introduction. My name is Ehab Meselhe. I'm a professor at Tulane University in a department called River Coastal Science and Engineering. My background is I'm a civil engineer, water resources engineer specifically, and I have been at Tulane since 2019, so I've been here for a little bit, and I'm so excited to be here with you today to do this session.
Thank you so much. I'm also little teaser. I don't know what's going to come of this conversation because every time I talk to you, you're involved in something really cool and interesting that you weave back into, for sure, your profession. What are you curious about these days? There's no shortage of options.
Yes. So we are actually just about to launch an undergraduate in civil engineering at Tulane, which is a major milestone for us. And that made me very curious in general and much more broadly about the views and the impression of the younger generations about higher education broadly. The cost of attending college is continuing to increase to a level perhaps beyond the means of most of the middle class citizens in the US. That if we can still even define what middle class precisely is. I'm curious about the entanglement of politics in higher education and the influence of powerful interest groups on the decisions that affect higher education. Um, I'm curious about if we are going to see a shift away from higher education because the younger generation don't see the value that perhaps generations in the past saw in higher education. Perhaps they want to pursue other venues to learn skills and make a living without carrying heavy loans. So these things are in the back of my mind while we are designing this brand new degree. So perhaps we can be thoughtful about it and make sure that the design of the degree, what it offers, what it produces, is something really valuable to the community, if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. And I think it's refreshing to hear you talk about. I think often when people talk about higher ed, at least in my experience, or they talk about gaining the skills and gaining a job and career, and sometimes people talk about it in a silo as opposed to how can we think about it in partnership with each other and let higher ed evolve to meet the needs. When did you first conceive of the undergrad program? How long has it been? And now that you're embarking on it, it's going to be a thing that folks can come and enroll in. What are maybe your top two things that you're really almost non-negotiable about that the students will be able to experience?
So the first part of your question, how long has it been? Tulane did not have civil engineering since 2005 or so, after Katrina, and there were some changes that happened at Tulane. And when they formed our department River Coastal Science and Engineering in 2017 or so. It was formed with the intent to try to bring at least components of engineering back to Tulane. And instead of bringing back the broader civil engineering all at once, at least we are starting with the water component of civil engineering. So it has been on the thinking of all levels at Tulane to bring civil engineering or water resources at least as a first step for the past at least 8 years or so. And obviously, what's the things that are really of primary importance for us is that we want to make sure that the students that we produce understand the complexity of environmental engineering. Now it's so nuanced. It's no longer about, yes, we do need to do the basic functions of, when you take a license exam, you have to take an oath that you will protect the safety and the welfare of the public. That's basic, that's absolutely understandable. But now engineering became so much more complicated because you have to interact and understand many other disciplines. You need to understand the economics, you need to understand the impacts on the societies that you are building these large-scale civil structures in. You need to understand the impacts on the environment. So you have to work with, ecologists and biologists. You need to understand the policies. So you interact with perhaps attorneys. So it's much more nuanced than before. So it's really non-negotiable to produce students that are very focused only on their discipline. We want them to be very strong in their discipline, but we want them to understand how to interact with variety of other disciplines.
That makes this won't be news to you. We've talked about this conversation. Won't be news to you. It makes my learning designer curriculum instruction research mind light up, because for me, you're taking that approach of it's a living system and there's multiple stakeholders and there's multiple viewpoints and there's nuance in it, right? You can't literally ask a question to Chat GPT and be like, give me the best answer for this. But how do you weave together all these different practices? You mentioned sociology and economics, and of course the environmental aspect, and then just civil engineering as a practice. How do you do that? How are y'all going about that in a way that is meeting our seeking college folks in that
Yeah.
way?
And I tell you, it is extremely difficult. When we started to design our classes, we started with our graduate degrees. And it is glamorous to talk about interdisciplinary education, and we want to be broad and we want to be open-minded. But when you actually try to go dive into the details, designing these classes is extremely difficult because you are always stretched between, do you provide enough breadth? But then all of your students, they know a little bit about every subject, but they don't know enough about any of the subjects. Then you start to worry about the depth. But if you want to provide both depth and breadth, then you need to keep these students for 10 years, which is not possible.
Right.
So it's really it needs a lot of thoughtful designs on how to actually approach that so that you can still offer technical rigor, but also make sure that they understand that there are other people who care about water, care about the same subject as you do, but they approach it from a very different angle. School of Public Health at Tulane, they deal with water, but they deal with it in a very different way than the biology department, than earth and environmental science, than engineering. They all deal with, than economists in the business school. They all deal with issues related to the environment and water, but from very different perspective. So it requires very thoughtful approaches so that you can still identify a specific discipline in which that you need to be strong. But we do offer some of our classes are really broad that give you the context of what you will be dealing with if you choose to work on rivers or in coastal areas or in a variety of different environments. So we try to make our classes, some of them are what we call advanced classes in specific disciplines, but we have a number of classes that provide that breadth. Um, and students can assemble the list of classes that they want to pursue so that they can achieve that interdisciplinarity as well as also the technical details of a specific piece.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that because one, I loved your word describing interdisciplinary as glamorous, right? It's one of those it's one of those code words. Everyone's like, you want interdisciplinary, you want, all these fancy words, right? Of that get people's attention, but the actual practice of it is extremely difficult. And so I thank you for explaining that there are specific intentionally designed. I think that's another key part that y'all are doing so well. Intentionally designed breadth so you get that context, so you get out of your possibly engineer mind and say, wait, this is going to have actual impacts on all these different fields and humans, most importantly. Um, and then also, but how can you use your engineer brain and fine tune that? And can you talk a little bit about the process of doing that? Because, right, when students enroll, all that thinking has been done. It's been approved by people at the college, people at the university, etc. What was that process like of taking this big idea of having an undergraduate program to the fact that you'll have enrollments?
Yeah, so we're still in the process. As far as the undergraduate concern, we just put together the design, the vision of that degree, what the classes would look like, what the flow of the classes would look like. And we are still going through the chain of approvals at Tulane. It has not been finalized yet, but hopefully it will be very soon. And if everything goes well, and it gets approved, we probably should be able to start advertising for it in the fall, this coming fall. And it was difficult process because we are trying to make sure that the degree is very progressive and it is very interdisciplinary, but we still need to satisfy ABET requirements. That's the accreditation board. We still need to make sure that they will take the proper classes so that they can take and pass the fundamental of engineering exam, the professional
Right.
engineering licensing exam. And when you try to satisfy these multiple things, it becomes, okay, does this degree make sense anymore? So it took us several iterations to come up with something that is coherent. It still satisfies all these accreditation requirements, but it's something that is very unique, that produces students that are focused on rivers, coastal areas, to study water-related issues from engineering perspective, something that can help the community, something that is practical. Obviously, it probably will take some refinement as we go, because sometimes from the feedback of the students that will go through the program, you are actually supposed to continue to revise it and improve it and tweak it as we go. But like I said, it's to say I'm going to do something interdisciplinary and progressive is easy to say, but when you actually try to put a pen on paper, it's quite difficult. It's easier if you have unlimited time and you can take so many different classes, but
Right.
in practice, that's, students need to graduate within reasonable amount of time. So,
Right.
but we do have experience because we started with our graduate program. So our graduate program, we've already experienced that. And we've went through the difficulties because some of our students, literally, we had students who are planners, who are attorneys. We had couple environmental attorneys taking our classes because they want to know more about the vocabulary, about the context of cases that they participate in. This is interesting. All the attorneys that took our classes did the best of all students for whatever reason. It's-
Wow.
so yeah, they were so interested in the material, and they've always done the best in our classes. So we have engineers, we have scientists, we have planners, we have attorneys, we have geologists, we have, I mean, all kind of students. For whatever reason, the attorneys did the best.
That's wild. That's its own research project over there, right? Like in investigating that. So how cool, because I think it's a, structure impacts the experience so much. And so it feels like y'all have clearly designed the graduate experience to welcome in and meet people from different professions, which to me, like in looking at that, I'm like, well, that means that the structure is doing something right. Because if the structure was only attracting engineers, like, et cetera, especially to the goal of interdisciplinary and contextually based work, what has have what have y'all learned from having those diverse professional experiences in your graduate programs? How has that influenced how you're designing the undergrad?
A very good question. So, the classes that I mentioned that are being attended by a variety of people are, we have two classes that I'm calling them the window to our program. We have a class called Introduction to River Engineering and Introduction to Coastal Engineering. And these two classes, which is a lesson that we learn, they have to be taught by multiple people. So each one of those two classes that I mentioned, they have at least 5 instructors. So, and every instructor take a couple modules to teach because they have a specific expertise. So we have biogeochemist, we have a engineering mechanics, we have a geologist, we have a climate change expert, we have a modeling expert, we have a different expert in different fields. They go in and they introduce that aspect or that discipline of studying water. So, and those are classes that really give the context when you want to study rivers, especially major rivers in the world. What is it that you need to know, and what does it entail? It's not only water and sediment in this river. There is so much more to it than that. We do invite people from other schools. We invite people from School of Public Health. We invite people from the Environmental Law School. So we do give them that breadth. And those are the classes that make the students very interested in the subject, and they can identify from all of these modules which discipline they want to dive in. Then after those two classes, we have a set of classes that dive into each one of those disciplines, and you can choose to take one, and you can take maybe more than one discipline. You can identify a couple of them and then we have advanced classes to follow up on that. We try to design our undergraduates similar to that. We do have those window classes at the freshman, sophomore, and a little bit into the junior that give them that entrance to the discipline, and then followed by a lot of classes that give them the technical rigor into their background.
I love that. The idea that, traditionally an 18-isk-year-old would know exactly what they want to do seems absurd, right? If we look at it in our own, at least in my own experience, or
That's right.
logically. And so I love the idea, I love the fact that y'all are the Windows courses to let people just play and
That's right.
see what they're naturally gravitating to, or see what their natural, brain synapses gravitate to, and what piques their interest. I think that's really, really smart, and I would anticipate that your start to completion rates are pretty good because of that nurturing.
It also gives them an opportunity to decide early because of that. If
Right.
this is something that they are really interested in, they can continue. And if it's not, at least they would know early.
Right. Absolutely. Because sometimes if you're getting into your major, traditionally maybe the junior or senior year, that's kind of late to if you have to totally switch
Yeah,
schools, and that's adding years and
right.
dollars onto your experience. Uh, wouldn't that be nice to know what we really like to do earlier on?
Early on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
So doing that, having that approach and that way of thinking is we look at all the research of designing curriculum and instruction, that's not the norm. It's not the norm for how most curriculum instruction is designed, and at least I can speak for the United States at a public level. Um, what, if you don't mind sharing, what are there elements or experiences you've had or interests that you have that have helped shape the way that you look at that course design and really making sure that you are covering both breadth and depth because it is such a progressive approach to curriculum design to actually carry that out. Um, it makes me think that maybe you have other influences in your life that help you think about content and engagement differently.
No, that's a great question. It's a great question. I think something also that we have been really fortunate to have in our graduate program is our instructors are a mix. Some of us are from academic background, but we have so many instructors also that have 30, 40 years of practical experience. Because some of our instructors are from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have PhDs, they are very well experienced, but they are not academicians. They all of their entire professional life have been working on large scale civil projects and environmental projects. So they bring in that incredible amount of experience. Me personally, also, as you may know, that I've worked in state schools, I worked in the private industry, I worked for nonprofit, and now I'm working at a private institution. I have been part of really complicated, large-scale coastal projects and water resources projects. That also shaped my approach in designing a degree that really needs to provide the students with the proper knowledge and awareness of the complexity that they will face in their professional career. So all of these elements helped us to select classes that really are going to help the students to be contributing to the societies and to the communities that they will work in, which is something very important.
Yeah. One hopefully essential one day, right? That everyone's having that viewpoint. Uh, what captured me is when you said your willingness to walk towards the complexity, because there is plenty of examples out there where people are like, I like math, I'm going to teach math. I don't care how the math connects. I don't care the outcomes. I'm here to do math. That's just one, random example. But the way you're talking about in your own experience, not only have you personally experienced and professionally experienced the complexity of actually pulling off this project, and we have no shortage of water coastal projects here in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, but to walk into that complexity, it's one thing to intellectually realize it's a complex, it's a nuanced context. It's another thing to go towards it and to stay in there. And a lot of people, when they go towards complexity, you get overwhelmed, you get anxious, you want to shut down, you get burnt out, right? If you keep going. And so I assume you've developed practices that keep you in that fight, not fight, but within that journey. How do you stay going towards this complexity? Because there's plenty of folks with accolades that are not doing that work.
Yeah, and I tell you something, if you really want to help communities, you have to learn how to navigate these complexities. It is so easy to stick to your guns and say, I'm going to do things by the book, and I am not willing to bend or compromise one iota. And I'm not promoting to compromise, but I am promoting on teaching the students how to navigate these complexities, because very rare, and I probably would say it probably doesn't exist, silver bullet solutions in the midst of these complexities do not exist. If we had a silver bullet solution, believe me, it would have been implemented in coastal Louisiana. But because our coast serves so many functions, it's for hunting and recreation, it's for oil and gas, it's for navigation, it's for fishing industry. It has a major cultural value, and it's so dear and near to a lot of people. So when you try to actually implement any strategy whatsoever to try to protect it, to try to restore it, you will have to step on so many toes trying to do that. So the issue is, can we train our students on how to navigate these complexities and coming up with something that is palatable to people? It's not about, I'm not asking you to do anything from engineering point of view unethical or compromising or endanger the safety. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about coming up with solutions that is still palatable to people, but it does move us an inch toward a good thing. It may not accomplish 100% because 100% may not be possible. So what is the next can you do? Can you achieve 60% of what everybody wants rather than 100%? So navigating the complexity is the key word. I don't want to call it, compromising. I want to call it navigating the complexity. So you can come up with something that is doable, because it's easy to dig your heel in and then we don't go accomplish anything. So it's not helpful. We want the students and future professionals to be helpful, to move the needle, even if it's moving the needle a little bit, but a little bit at a time will get us somewhere.
Thank you for sharing that and saying it
That
so.
opinion is not popular, by the way.
I know,
It's
I
not
know, and
popular because people want to get what they want to 100%, and I don't care about the other guy. But I think that that's not helpful. Um,
I agree with you. I think it's not helpful in the best case scenario. I think in the
yeah.
worst case scenario, it gets very violent and very dangerous. Yes. Thank you for saying that. I kind of was like, do we have big megaphones? Can we just put that out there and just everyone hear your TED talk? So navigating the complexity, yes. And I would also ask, I believe that that's also a skill. It's a muscle that we have to practice. And so I love that you're designing programs where students can get in there and practice in a very safe container. How do you practice navigating this complexity within the world of civil engineering and waterways and coastal Gulf, coastal Louisiana specifically? But I would also argue, I'm guessing you just didn't like wake up one day and say, here's what we're doing though. So I'm curious, how do you keep yourself primed and able to navigate complexity? Because to teach
Um,
something, you really got to know it.
yeah, yeah. So really the driver that keeps me going is I look at because I do live in South Louisiana, I look at the community around me and I see how much they need help. And that's my motivation, is to keep going and keep learning and keep trying to find ways. Um, because these are the people who are struggling to begin with. These are the people who are facing so many challenges, and they do need help. So that's my driving force, to continue to learn, to find ways to help, find ways to that can be palatable to as broad audience as possible, so that we can move it forward. Um, People in South Louisiana, and that's the same almost in all coastal areas, you will find them struggling. Uh, there is no insurance, or it's either extremely expensive or it doesn't exist. So it's quite sad to go to see some of these communities are emptied. If you go to Venice, Louisiana, they probably lost. I went with a colleague of mine who's very experienced in that area. He said that compared to Katrina days, they lost about 70, 80% of their population. So what's left there is very little. So
Wow.
that's the driving force behind what I do. Trying to be helpful, trying to be practical as much as I can in whatever role I'm playing. That's my motivation.
There's no shortage of climate justice issues.
Yes.
Very close to home, if you don't mind me using that phrase. Yeah, being connected to the community and listening and working with to drive all this, right? Because it's not easy. Other folks are saying it's easy and throwing out, like you said, silver bullets, but we know that if best case scenario is not harmful, but usually it's not the case.
Yeah.
Um, do you mind if I ask you, and just because we've had multiple conversations, and you can tell me, don't want to talk about it, and also we're editing all this. Um, can I ask you, what does the role of storytelling have to do with your work?
Yeah, so the storytelling. Yes. No, I love the storytelling approach that I have been engaged with in the past few years. Um, and I implemented it in one of my classes last fall. We have a freshman class called Gulf Coast in 2100. So it looks at the future of the Gulf Coast. It's part of a program called Gulf Scholar Program. It's basically an initiative to produce a generation of students who are interested to pursue a career in the Gulf Coast in variety of ways.
Yeah.
So we're teaching them the challenges and the opportunities that exist in the Gulf, various job opportunities. So I implemented storytelling in that class. We had one semester long project where I divided the class into group of threes, and every group need to pick a topic and they need to tell the rest of the students, a story about that topic. So they picked up variety of topics, and I told them that this is not a term paper. I don't need you to write a report or stand up and give me a PowerPoint presentation. I want you to tell me a story. So format it in any way you want. You can just stand up and talk. You can record yourself in a video, but dive deep and make it a story. You can include technical elements in it because it's a science elective class, but please frame it as a story. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to do it that way. The students took them a while to wrap their head around what is it that I'm talking about,
Yeah.
because it's not a usual request to frame it's very easy to say we're going to write a term paper.
Right.
Yes, but it was very interesting. It took time, but I believe the students enjoyed it because it made them break those shackles a little bit and not frame it as a traditional term paper, but dive deep and look at the impact of whatever technical topic you picked. How does that affect people? Can you frame it as a story? Can you narrate that story to people who are not technical so you can understand what you're talking about? Um, but it was a great class because I brought a panel of professionals from the Gulf Coast so that they can show them what are the opportunities, what are the job opportunities out there, and what kind of salaries do they make, what kind of challenges that they will face. It was a great class. So that's an element of storytelling that I actually did implement in my class.
That's super cool. Yeah, I think it well works a different part of your brain and arguably maybe a different part of your heart when you have to take something and put it into a story and put characters behind it and have outcomes and make it human. I think
Exactly.
storytelling makes things human in a very gorgeous and ancient, probably the first thing we ever did as humans. Um, what do you think? What did that approach elicit in the class that you think that conversely, if you had said, term paper, 7 pages, blah, 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 due on Friday, that was what were you able to elicit from that assignment and that experience that maybe the basic term paper, research paper would not?
I think engagement.
Yeah.
I think it grabbed their attention, and it made them so much more curious about this class because it I think it grabbed their attention that this is a very unusual class. We're not going through the motion, and I'm just gonna get a science elective out of my way. Um, and I try to emphasize to make it worth your time since you're here already. Don't make the focus your grade. Make the focus that what am I going to walk away with from this class. So If I pick a keyword that influenced the class is engagement. It made them so much more engaged in the class. Um, and that's it's so rewarding to see that because there is nothing deflating than to have a large class where people are not paying attention, they are just dreading being there. Um, it was clear that they were really learning from the class. They are enjoying the participation in the class. So that's what I gleaned out of this experience.
I love everything about that. I love that for PK-12. I love that for higher ed. I love that for workplace because we're seeing we have no shortage of noise and distractions in our world. So the idea of engagement itself, uh, you know, I don't know a single industry, especially around L&D or learning development, that is not thinking about that. What advice do you have for folks who are looking to bring that ability and desire and the ability to navigate the complexity and to really be intentional about what you design and put out there? What advice would you give for someone who's like, I, I want to do that. I want to have elements of that in my life, in my job, in my industry.
Um, like you said, I think you answered your own question. Being intentional about how to go about learning these skills, and or if you really want to be engaged in navigating these complexities, then you need to pursue the proper education. There are so many degrees out there that are very traditional. There's nothing wrong with traditional, but curriculum like that will teach you how to perform the calculations, do the technical background, um, but you will be stuck. In my opinion, you will get stuck. You will just finish designing the project, but you will have no idea if this is what's going to pass. You'll have no idea if this is going to be acceptable. And if it's not acceptable, how are you going to modify it to make it more acceptable? I think these are the difficult aspects. Believe me, the calculations, as complex as they are, designing them from engineering perspectives is not the difficult part. The difficult part is to get people to agree to it, because you can design a fantastic project, and if it gets entangled in litigation, that design is going to be on the shelf for years and years and years
Right.
until the project becomes obsolete, because every project is designed to be built at a certain time frame, and if that time passes, quite often
Yeah.
it becomes obsolete, or at a minimum you're going to have to redesign it. You're going to have to go back and recheck the conditions of the field and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I would say if somebody wants to be engaged, if they want to be, okay, I want to do that, I want to navigate these complexities, then you need to get the proper education to do that.
And in addition to the content knowledge, the actual ability, in your case, doing the calculations, doing the field work, doing the actual things you got to do to build the XYZ, prevent erosion, etc. What else would you throw in there as a complementary educational experiences?
They have to appreciate the other disciplines that gets affected and they contribute to that knowledge. An individual who is exclusively focusing on their own discipline and their own contribution to that bigger piece, these are not the one that will actually navigate the complexity, because they have no awareness of the the importance of planning, the importance of the policies, the importance of the environmental issues, the importance of the social issues, the importance of the economic issues. If you go into something like this being very dismissive of everything else, as long as the engineering is sound, or as long as the economics are sound, or as long as the policies are sound, it will fail every single time. It will fail. So only works only if you have that approach coming in, that you have the buy-in from the public, You
Yeah.
have the buy-in from the politicians. You have the buy-in from from the decision makers
Yeah.
that you are compliant to any regulatory issues. Like it or hate it, you have to check all these.
Hmm.
It does take a lot of patience, it takes a lot of broad understanding, and it takes a lot of intelligence
Hmm.
and awareness in order to pass it through. There are so many projects that are outstanding on paper, but they just don't make it.
Right. For a whole host of reasons, I'm sure, that are
Yes.
equally interconnected.
Yep.
Yeah. um, if someone, I think, if folks are watching this and they care about our waterways, they may live on the coast. Um, they like to vacation to a coast. They like to drink water, clean water, ideally. Um, and they care about folks who live in areas that are more susceptible to climate change on our coasts. What would you suggest folks who want to have a better understanding of the context of our rivers and waterways in our coastal regions? Is there a source, a book, a video, a topic that you would encourage people to, or multiple, that you would encourage people to start in their own education in better understanding this extremely complex?
Boy, that is the toughest question for the whole dialogue. Yeah, that one is tough. I would start with documentaries. I
Okay.
like documentaries because they tend to be accurate and factual, um, rather than to read somebody's opinion,
Mm,
because every opinion is gonna be biased one way or the other.
right.
Um, Either biased toward advocacy or biased toward policies or whatever. But I would start with documentaries because that at least will give the context of where we are and how did we get here and what are the challenges. I think that that's always a good start to understand what is the problem, what's the
Right.
issue, and how did we get here. And if the documentary is really accurate, it will list the contributions of the factors that got us here. Is it the levees? Is it the oil and gas industry? Is it natural processes? Is it man made processes or anthropogenic processes? I think understanding that is a very good first.
Thank you for taking a gigantic question and funneling it down to a very actionable step of, hopping on to YouTube or Netflix or wherever, um, and looking up documentaries around this to kind of get that landscape assessment to really anchor ourselves in the complexity of it. In the name of Gen AI and search functions, because that's the 21st century we live in, if someone was like, I want to know more about this, but they go to their computer and they're like, I'm looking for a documentary about, and in their head, they're just like, climate, water, coast. And those are very broad, right? And it could very much come back. Are there any like prompts or phrases that people who are interested in this topic and want to navigate this complexity that you would suggest for them to search for, to put in their Netflix bar, to put in their Chat GPT, to put in their Google, to be like, I'm looking for a documentary that truly gets after some of these intersections?
Yeah, I would definitely go to ChatGPT. And you can actually tell it exactly what you want. You can actually say, I want an unbiased
Mm-hmm.
documentary to help me understand the coastal complexity of Louisiana. And you can put the word, I want an unbiased documentary that tells me the challenges, tells me how we got here. ChatGPT is pretty impressive, and it's getting better.
Yeah.
Um, I use it every day, a lot of times, and it's good to embrace it. It's pretty futile to try to reject it. Um, it's a pretty intelligent. It's I don't want to call it a search engine. It's way more than that, but it's you can think of it at least as a pretty intelligent search engine, at a minimum. Um, and I've used it for a broad range of research questions, of even day-to-day inquiries is pretty good, and it's getting better. And if the answer, sometimes the answers are wrong, and I give the feedback, and I say that answer is wrong, and here is the right answer. Please incorporate it back into your engine.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's what I would do. I would actually say, give me an unbiased list of documentaries, um,
Mhm.
and it will give you a pretty good list.
Thank you for that specificity. I myself am using ChatGPT or its its contemporaries on a daily basis as well, and also noticing when it's wrong and letting it know, etc. So I think I'm going to do that
Yeah,
before I publish this. I'm gonna put that, and then I'll put what I found in the
good. That
comments.
would be good. That would be pretty nice.
Moving people along in this process of
Yes.
better understanding the complexity of the world in which we live, because I firmly believe there's no shortage of um, avenues to better understand the world in which we live. And it can be overwhelming. So hopefully we'll give some folks, some people, some avenues to walk down. Um, if people want to learn more about you, follow your work, engage in what y'all are doing at Tulane, what you're doing here in coastal Louisiana, where can they find you?
Definitely our department, myself included, and all the other faculty are all on the website at Tulane. Please visit our website, the Department of River Coastal Science and Engineering. Learn about our degrees, and if you have any question, please do email me. I'm available.
Uh, Thank you so, so much, Ehab. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation as I suspected I would. Um, and thank you for always challenging my thinking and giving me ways to explore. Uh,
You're more than welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for this very wonderful dialogue. I learned a lot myself.
well, thank you and cheers. We'll talk soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.